Hi everyone, and welcome back to Deanly Divine. Today, we're tackling a huge topic. You've probably heard the saying, history is written by the victors. Well, when it comes to the Islamic Golden Age, that story has been twisted for centuries. You've been fed a narrative of conquest and intolerance, that science was just copied from the Greeks, that women were invisible. But what if that's all wrong? Not just a little wrong, but a caricature painted by centuries of hostility and misunderstanding. This era, stretching roughly from the 8th to the 14th centuries, wasn't a dark age. It was a time of astounding intellectual and cultural light, centered in cities like Baghdad, once the largest and most vibrant city on earth. It was a time when Muslim, Christian, and Jewish scholars worked side by side in the legendary House of Wisdom. Today we're going to dismantle 3 of the biggest myths about Islamic history and uncover a past that might just change how you see the world. Alright, myth number 1. The idea that Islam spread only by the sword. We all know the image, a fanatical warrior forcing conversion on terrified people. Now, nobody's denying the early Islamic conquests. They were real, and they were vast. But to shrink the spread of a global faith down to just that? That's where the story gets lazy. The reality is far more complex and, frankly, way more interesting. After the initial expansion, conversion was often a slow, voluntary process. Think about it. For centuries, the faith traveled along the Silk Road and maritime trade routes with merchants and mystics, not just armies. From Spain to Indonesia, many people chose to convert because of the culture's appeal, the economic perks of joining a massive trade network, or simply through marriage. And inside the empire, the policies were often remarkably tolerant for the time. The Quran itself says, "Let there be no compulsion in religion." For most of this period, non-Muslims, called dhimmis, could practice their own faith. They paid a tax, the jizya, and in return, the state protected them and they didn't have to serve in the military. The fact that large Christian communities, like the Copts in Egypt, have existed continuously for centuries under Muslim rule is a living testament to this policy. When Muslims ruled parts of Spain for nearly 800 years and India for 1,000, they never succeeded in forcing mass conversions. At the height of the Golden Age, rulers like the Abbasid caliphs Harun al-Rashid and al-Mamun were famous not for their wars, but for their incredible patronage of scholarship. They poured vast sums of money into translating the world's knowledge from Greek, Persian, and Indian texts into Arabic. Their ambition wasn't just conquering land, it was conquering knowledge. This was a government that prioritized translation over warfare. The Golden Age didn't end because it was inherently violent. It was shattered from the outside by the devastating Mongol invasions, which climaxed with the total destruction of Baghdad in 1258, a blow from which the intellectual heart of the empire never truly recovered. Okay, on to myth number 2. This one's a classic, that scholars in the Islamic world were basically glorified librarians. That they just kept Greek knowledge on a shelf, collecting dust, while Europe was in the Dark Ages. This isn't just wrong. It's an insult to centuries of world-changing innovation. Yes, they translated Greek, Persian, and Indian texts, tons of them, but they didn't just copy them, they challenged them, critiqued them, and used them as a launchpad for brand new discoveries. The Islamic world wasn't a refrigerator for Greek ideas, it was an incubator. Let's get specific. The scientific method as we know it wasn't born in a single moment, but one of its key architects was a 10th century genius named Ibn al-Haytham. He systematically used experiments to test his ideas. He argued that we see because light enters our eyes, disproving the popular theory that our eyes shot out some kind of ray. This rigorous, evidence-based approach was revolutionary and directly influenced later European thinkers like Newton. Ever used algebra? You have the 9th century Persian scholar Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi to thank. He systematized the entire discipline. The word algebra itself comes from the title of his book, Al-Jabr. His work also introduced the Hindu-Arabic numerals, 0 through 9 to the wider world. So every time you solve an equation or use a computer, you're using the legacy of al-Khwarizmi, whose name gave us the word algorithm. In medicine, the contributions were staggering. The Canon of Medicine, written by Ibn Sina or Avicenna in the 11th century, was the medical textbook in European universities for 600 years. He introduced concepts like quarantine to stop the spread of disease and the idea of clinical drug trials. Before him, the physician al-Razi was one of the first known to clinically distinguish between smallpox and measles, and the 10th century surgeon al-Zarawi invented dozens of surgical instruments we'd recognize today, including forceps, the syringe, and using catgut for internal stitches. In the skies, astronomers like al-Battani and Nasir al-Din al-Tusi weren't just repeating the Greek astronomer Ptolemy, they were building massive observatories to correct his work, making incredibly precise calculations that paved the way for Copernicus. From Jabir ibn Hayyan, often called the father of chemistry, to Abbas ibn Firnas, who made a famous and well-documented attempt at controlled gliding in the 9th century, the story is one of innovation, not imitation. And that brings us to our third, and maybe the most damaging myth, the idea of the universally oppressed Muslim woman, voiceless, uneducated, and locked away. While that image may reflect realities in some places and times, it's a gross distortion of the Islamic Golden Age. While a woman in medieval Europe was often legally considered property, with little to no right to own land or initiate divorce, early Islamic law granted women these rights over 1,000 years ago. A woman had the right to inherit property, to own and operate her own business, and to initiate divorce proceedings. These were rights women in many parts of Europe wouldn't see until the 19th or 20th century. And this wasn't just on paper. Need proof? Look no further than the University of Al-Qarawiyyin in Fez, Morocco. It is often cited as the world's oldest existing and continually operating university. It was founded in 859 CE. And who founded it? Not a king, not a caliph. A woman. Fatima al-Fihri. Let that sink in. A woman founded the first degree-granting university in a world where, in most other places, women were denied even basic literacy. Now, this wasn't a perfect feminist utopia. Of course not. Women's lives varied hugely based on class and region. Things like veiling and seclusion became more common in the elite circles of the Abbasid court, influenced by Byzantine and Persian customs. But to paint the entire era with one brushstroke of oppression just isn't historically accurate. It erases the documented stories of women who had legal rights, economic power, and who left a monumental legacy. So, let's recap. Spread only by the sword? Nope. Just copied science? Not even close. Women had no rights? Factually wrong. The popular story you've been told isn't just a simplification, it's a distortion. It's a narrative that conveniently props up the idea of a dark East and an enlightened West. The truth is that the Islamic Golden Age was a vibrant, multi-ethnic, multi-religious engine of human progress. Its light didn't just preserve ancient knowledge, it ignited the spark that would eventually fuel the European Renaissance. The real question isn't if this history happened, it's why so much of it got buried. If we cleared some things up for you, hit that subscribe button and click the bell for more hidden histories. And more importantly, share this video. Help us set the record straight. What other historical myths should we bust next? Drop them in the comments below.